the NDC's propaganda secretary, correct?
Yes, you could say so.
Was or it still is?
Still is. I've not handed over, but
okay.
Largely a lot of the work is being done by one of my deputies, Solomon Kanza. And so...
I see. Okay. Let's start with the very latest, which is that Isofoton lost, and they're going to pay in excess of $300,000 to the state. Now, Isofoton tonight says they are not going to pay that money. Why? Because it's a government duty to go to Parliament and secure parliamentary approval for that contract. And just mind you, that the court's ruling today essentially was that because Isofoton did not have that parliamentary approval, that contract ab initio was null and void. And so it's wrong for you to pay them anything based on a contract that is non-existent. The question then is, your government failed to do that job. Now, they're saying we won't pay because you can't blame us, hold the government responsible. How do you respond to those who say you failed the people of Ghana?
Well, it probably is not useful to look at it so much in terms of this government failed or that government didn't fail. I think in the end, what we want is first to set a culture within which going forward, the nation will get a good deal in these transactions. And also, too, that if opportunity exists to save the country money, that we should do it. The question about some of these transactions having to go to Parliament and yet not going to Parliament is an old one. And I am happy Parliament itself is beginning to sit down to say we must find ways of ensuring that the provisions are clearer.
Until there's a committee.
Exactly. And that we should work with them. That if international transactions must come to Parliament, that they do come to Parliament.
Let me ask a question. Thankfully, you're both in Parliament. If government does not take a contract or does not inform Parliament of the existence of a certain international contract, how will Parliament know that something like that is happening that will require its approval? Do you get a point I'm making?
No, Parliament would not know. Unless it is brought to the notice of Parliament, Parliament will definitely not know. And even if unofficially some members of Parliament got to know, it would not constitute formal notification to Parliament. Unless Parliament took steps to find out from the executive if any such thing was happening, which is not a practice. The principle of separation of powers would not allow Parliament to always be asking the executive, are you about to do the wrong thing? But once the wrong has happened, it is within the powers of Parliament to find out why it happened and to engage with the executive in the interest of the nation on how going forward we would avoid repeating those mistakes.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're looking at things retrospectively, the harm would have already been done, like in Isofoton, like in Waterville. Then Parliament is now going to ask, okay, why did that happen? Why didn't you do it? By that time, the money would have been lost already.
Well, to begin with, that is why the steps you take should look into the future. That how do we ensure that going forward it doesn't happen again? But the good thing is that when you are an external entity dealing with Ghana as a country and you're going to involve in a transaction with us, you have to be sure that Ghana has made that decision properly. Ghana is not a minister you are signing the contract with. Ghana is a republic, it has a parliament. You must understand the laws of the country you're dealing with. Otherwise, you cannot use that as an excuse to say, some officials within the government who should have taken it to Parliament didn't. So me sitting somewhere, I should not be held responsible. There's a principle in law that buyer beware. You should take steps to ensure that the country you're dealing with has made a decision to transact business with you properly. And which is why if that is Isofoton's basis for saying they would not pay, they will soon realize that the law will not allow them. I mean, if they had this pleading, they should have made it in court that don't make us responsible for something that my transaction partner should have done and that I could just look away. They should have made that submission. If they did and they were unsuccessful, they are not in a position now to say they would disobey the courts for this reason. But you see, if you look at it, we should be careful not to create a situation where external entities would engage in business with us. And then, let me even say, would connive with some elements in government to bypass Parliament, to bypass our laws and our procedures, do the wrong things. And then the only defense of that external party dealing with us is that, well, I didn't know that you are not doing the right things. The law is that if you're going to deal with a country, you must understand the country and how it makes its decisions. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you do the business at your own risk.
So the point you're making is that if I'm an external entity and I'm coming in and you're not seeking parliamentary approval, I'm saying, listen, I will not accept this contract. Indeed, I will not even go into a contract with you until you go.
Oh, of course. That is the reason. You see, that there's a currently...
But is that a realistic view? This is an entity that wants money. They want to come and make money. And there is 25 million euros on the table to get. And you're saying, listen, do the right thing before you come back to me. I'll come back to you. I want to bring in...
Which is why we need those inhibitions. That if you are an external entity coming to do business with us, don't be motivated by the fact that there's a deal there for you. That be interested in how the country makes its decisions, because it could come back to hurt you. When I have the opportunity to speak again, I would explain why it needs to be so, so that the national interest will be protected. And it's not just Ghana.
Fantastic.
It's everywhere.
Before I move on to Mr. Kwashika, I want to ask the political question, and you can answer that very briefly. Does the NPP accept responsibility for what happened in both the Waterville case and the Isofoton? Do you accept responsibility for it? This is to you.
Oh, well,
do you accept responsibility? Does the NPP accept responsibility for what happened in the Waterville and the Isofoton case?
I don't know what you mean by. You mean by that the party should pay?
No, I'm talking about because
there is no doubt about it. If it was under the NPP administration that it did not happen, it is a fact.
So you accept responsibility for it?
I don't know what you me sitting here.
No,
saying,
I'm talking about speaking as a party per se.
Of course, it did happen under the NPP administration. It shouldn't have happened. Okay. I have no difficulty saying that, except to make the point that in the case of Isofoton, that they engaged in disagreements with government over these matters. And it was the stalemate that made it impossible for them to get their money under that administration. But subsequently, they managed to. So it's not as though the country under the previous administration just didn't know. In Waterville's case, it's slightly different. I mean, clearly, it should have come to Parliament under the NPP administration. It didn't. It's unfortunate. It should have been. But once the succeeding government was going to make the payments, then the government also had a responsibility. And I do not even speak in a partisan way. Whether it was the NPP administration or any other administration, had a responsibility to ask that, are we in a position to take advantage of the laws to save the country money? If yes, then you do that.
Good juncture to bring in, Mr. Kwashika. Why did your government fail to ask these questions?
Well, of course, I think that largely you could talk about misjudgment. You could also talk about probably some extra due diligence should have been done. But however you look at it, there are infractions on all sides. Be the government before the NDC government or the NDC government, the NDC-led administration. And it's a learning curve for us as a nation. And I think that as these things are coming up, these revelations are coming up, and these conclusions are being arrived at, it allows us, to fine-tune our approaches and the way we deal with situations. I believe strongly that it is within the context of recent happenings that Parliament decided to put together an ad hoc committee, to look at Article 181 again, as regards the modifications when we're dealing with international loans and etc. And that obviously, I'm sure by the end of the work of that committee, we'll have a clearer approach, in dealing or compelling the executive to bring such contracts before Parliament, even if they've decided not to do that. the whole issue was problematic right from the start. Somebody going into some contract with some other international entity and abrogating the contract along the line. That was a contract that did not come before Parliament for parliamentary approval, and as a result of the abrogation, it became necessary for that individual to hold us, by the horns, to compel us, to pay judgment debts.
So, I know, see if I can come in. I mean, how could somebody abrogate a contract that from the court ruling we have right now didn't exist anyway?
Well,
it hadn't
I
gone
think
to
that
Parliament.
we're talking about two issues. Isofoton.
It didn't.
There are two issues to talk about. Isofoton, for instance, clearly there was a contract. Okay,
No.
there was a contract. The documents are here. We can go through them.
Please, let's do so. For our own benefit.
Yeah.
And so we are going to go through documents he has about the contracts that government indeed entered into between itself and Isofoton. That subject came up strongly at the Supreme Court today. The question really is, did we have a contract, a valid contract, that then you could say was abrogated? The point is, ab initio, from the very beginning.
It doesn't exist.
It didn't exist. Some have said so. But if he has documents contrary to that, why?
The court has
it's good that we look at it.
Yeah, of course. The court has settled that matter. But the reality is that there was a contract, for Isofoton to produce solar energy for the rural community.
Yeah.
And then along the line, that was when the late Bawredu was Minister of Finance. Okay, and subsequently, Kandapa was Minister of Energy. And when Professor Michael Kwe became Minister for Energy, he abrogated the contract on the instruction, as we were told, on the instruction of the then Chief of Staff. And the company was given to Telenor, another company. So clearly there was a contract. That contract never went before Parliament. And subsequently, the contract was abrogated, given to another company. The job was given to another company. And then Isofoton thought that, look, if I had gone through the process and I was awarded a contract, and you subsequently terminate that contract without any solid justification, the only reason being that you're talking about a new procurement law, there are infractions, and he thought he was unfairly treated, and duly so. And if he therefore decided to take the matter up to court, and the court awarded judgment in his favor, based on the issues, clearly you cannot say that there was no contract. There was a contract. Now, the thorny issue that we're dealing with is that this is a contract that did not go before Parliament to gain parliamentary approval. And so if Mr. Kojo Mpianim had done the right thing at the time by taking this contract up to Parliament, this loan agreement, this contract to Parliament, then clearly Parliament would have given it approval. And if there was some termination along the line, then the appropriate procedures would have also been followed to deal with it. But I do not think that the right thing was done from the start. And Kweku Kwating, my honorable colleague, did admit that there were infractions even during the MPP administration. And subsequently, in paying the debts, probably we also should have taken that into consideration. But that probably was also not done. The reason
wasn't done.
Obviously wasn't done. The reason for which we are where we are. And I am only saying that these serve as it's a learning curve for us as a nation, such that we can learn from these situations and move on, put in place the right mechanisms, if they don't exist, to ensure that these do not recur. When we talk about judgment debts, there are several, so many of them. And we've been paying judgment that could go down from 2004 through to 2009 or to 2012. You're getting the point. So it's been a challenge that has bedeviled this nation. It's an issue that must not be looked at through political partisan lenses. We must, for one, look at these issues from a very nationalistic perspective, because the nation has been bleeding for far too long through the payment of judgment debts. You know, you can talk about the Delta Food Limited, the Great Cape judgment debt of 1.1 US dollars that was being demanded some time back. I mean, there's so many of them. So I see this as we getting to a point where we need to put the lead on all these difficult, thorny issue of judgment debts. You know, because these are monies, if you put them together, colossal amounts of money that could actually fix our roads, that could actually build hospitals in our rural communities. And I do not think this is the time to really be blaming one a group of people or another group of people. What is important is that...
I tell you why the blame game sometimes is important. Because even at the Supreme Court, they singled out individuals for blame. Some of them actually will have to face a disciplinary action, even including the High Court itself. The Supreme Court chastised the High Court. So when we know those who are responsible, then clearly we can go to them, ask them hard, tough questions, punish them if possible, clear them if that is necessary, so that we can clean the system and move on. I want to take a short break. When we come back, I know Mr. Kwarteng has a lot to say about what he said, but I will come back to you also to wrap up. Then move on to other issues that have cropped up relating to this same matter. We had two different press statements coming from one, the Attorney General, and the Deputy Attorney General, to be very specific, and the former Attorney General, Martin Amidu, on who should take credit. And that question also will beg the next one. How are we approaching the retrieval of the 25 million euros when we are still talking about who's taking credit? Are we focusing on that? Because that's a bigger issue. The minority in Parliament also held a press conference asking that Mr. Woyo may be made to deposit some amount of money in the bank so that when the case is over, the High Court will have some money to indeed take back if he loses that case. Was that really necessary when the case was at the High Court? We'll interrogate all that when we return from the short break. Thank you very much for staying with us. I will pick on the points that Mr. Richard Kwasiga made just before we left for that break and hand it over to Mr. Kwarteng, who wants to respond to that, but also move the discussion on to other bigger subjects. What's your position on the kind of position expressed by Mr. Kwasiga?
Well, to begin with, I think a contract comes into effect after certain things happen. What the court has saying is that those contracts that people claim were abrogated didn't exist in the first place. And you see, as a country, we should come together to protect the public purse. If we begin to, even against our own laws, when a court has ruled that it wasn't a valid contract, and therefore monies that were paid to people from state coffers must be returned, let's not go back and be saying that our own court was wrong and that some kind of contract was signed and it was abrogated and that is where the blame is. You see, that is what makes me uncomfortable. I think that the lessons about signing and making sure contracts that should go to Parliament before they are finalized is a valid one, and we can all engage with that. But
am I permitted to interject? You know, because
sure
let me just. I even think this whole point about whether there was a contract or there was not,
it's an issue.
It has been settled anyway.
Yeah,
there was no contract. I agree with him that going forward,
but he maintains he has evidence to back the point.
Well, he should have supported Waterville and maybe
no. That is not the issue.
If he thinks there's evidence to suggest.
Probably you're getting me wrong. I am not in a position to the judgments from the court, not at all. All that I'm saying is
you agree that there were no contracts?
It's not about no contract. After a judgment has been awarded and clear, it's inured to the benefit.
The judgment said.
It inured to the benefits of the Ghanaian people. The judgment also talk about it not having gone to court, especially in the Isofoton case. Okay, and the issue is this. Because on the 6th of June, 2005, the late Banredu signed a contract in Madrid. Hang on. As to whether the contract is valid or not is another issue. Because we're talking about the validity.
The court has ruled on the matter.
Kweku. It's not an issue of, yes, the court has ruled on the matter, nobody's challenging that. But what we're trying to point out is this, that who actually did wrong. It's not just one person. That's why we're saying that it's generally being a systemic failure. You know, that people did things with impunity. Others also did not do the due diligence that they ought to do. So it's an infraction on both sides. You're getting the point.
Like
if, for instance,
okay, don't take my time. Don't take my time. If
Kojo Pienim had not, sidestepped Parliament, you're getting the point. And yeah, he did.
You also look. I just think that don't be too eager to reduce the damage that this may have. If you look at it like that, may have caused to the NDC.
That is not the discussion. Not at all. This whole point, if anything at all, should be even this current government that should be taking credit for the fact that some errors were committed.
I wanted to finish a substantive point.
This whole point about and somebody did the wrong and doesn't help going forward. I have made a point that
how do you think it go forward?
Yes, under previous government, not going to Parliament when you should have happened. It is wrong. So I don't think that is a matter. You see, why people are angry with the current administration in respect of these matters is even if Parliament finalize the improvement we want to bring in the provisions that say come to Parliament, if the nation came together and said we will not allow this to happen, and individuals do not feel committed to protecting the public purse, these things will still happen. Why do I say this? Don't forget that in 2010, after Boyome had, and I use that as an example, had secured his default judgment. And what's a default judgment? That we decided not to put up a defense. And that is why the current second deputy speaker of Parliament has come under so much flag. That we just didn't have a case that we did not do anything. And then subsequently, the Attorney General at the time herself, supported by the deputy, said that, oh, we made a mistake. We should not have paid. So they went to court. The court says, pay a third. Just about 17 million. And the rest don't pay. I'm making a point quickly. I'll move on to that point. The rest don't pay. Somehow, the state went ahead and paid everything. And then we are now in court since 2010, battling to get back that 51. We all hear what has been happening in court. It's as though the prosecution is not interested in the matter. And then Martin Amidu, one man, not paid by the state, goes to court, and he has been able to, within a shorter time frame, secure for us something that the entire government has not been able to do. I'm coming.
Make the point. I'll come to you to respond substantively.
Yeah, now, what I'm saying is that when people begin to see that government is unwilling because some of the elements within government, some elements within government themselves are implicated, then people get angry. And so what we are all looking to see is for government to display the kind of commitment Martin Amidu had displayed. And is it not ironic that it was this Martin Amidu who was the government's Attorney General who was sacked in the middle of these matters? So, how do you convince the average Ghanaian that government really wants to support Martin Amidu to do what it is doing? And what we should be asking government, and not just this particular administration, but all future governments, is when you have to protect the public purse, are you able to do the things Martin Amidu is doing? Should you be doing that for us?
So Martin Amidu should be the standard?
Well, to the extent that he has pursued something that is not for his personal interest, that is not for his personal benefit, but on behalf of the people, I think all of us, and especially government that is paid by us to do that work, should be doing that.
Okay, let me bring him in to respond now.
Thank you very much. Yes, clearly, Kukwati wants to, play the mischief.
Really?
But that mischief will only hurt him, his party.
Why?
You see, Martin Amidu, who is Martin Amidu? Martin Amidu is a member of the NDC. Like it or hate it. You are getting the point, and he has repeatedly made that point. Now, we're saying that this whole issue of judgment debts were created under the guises of the NPP leadership.
Oh, look at
okay?
that. Yes.
They started it all. And, of course, we are saying that there might be some infractions along the line. Now, Martin Amidu was Attorney General. He might have seen things in a different perspective from some other people, even within the NDC-led administration.
And you sacked him?
No, that was a different matter. It was not based on the issues of judgment debts or the issues that he raised.
It was.
In this connection that he was sacked.
Why was he
sacked?
No, hang on. The
Why was he
reasons
sacked?
that were adduced are very different from what you probably hold. Now, let's face it.
Because according to him, it was. He had gone to the president with a list of people who should be tried, and the president didn't think so.
Assuming that was the case.
According to him.
Well, maybe according to him.
And he disagreed vehemently.
You and I were not there. You and I were not there. Okay? But clearly, Martin Amidu did not do this alone. The fact is that in the process, the researches and etc., he was supported.
After sacking him, then you helped him to do the research.
Mr. Kwarteng, please.
You're getting the point. So even at all, if there is a government that ought to be commended for having really saved the nation money, it should be the NDC-led government, because Martin Amidu himself is a member of the NDC. Beyond that, this current administration, the current Attorney General's department, supported him in diverse ways, and they are continuing to give him the necessary support, as it were, to really address
Have you
some of the
heard
issues.
Martin's response to what you just said?
Yes, I have.
Captured in the...
Yes, I have, because he says, in his view, nobody must be taking credit. And I do not think...
No. He says it's not true. It's not true that the AG's department assisted him anyway.
I'm surprised he brought it up here.
And he argues that he had taken the AG to court. The AG, they were defendants in the matter.
Yeah.
So how can a defendant who has been sued be assisting the person who is suing them in trying the case that will eventually go against them? That's his argument.
That becomes his word against that of the AG. Okay? But be as it may, I think that it is under the guise of this administration that these issues are being resolved. And the NPP cannot pretend to be taking credit for it, because they, in the first place, created the problem. The issue of Isofoton was created by, as a result of the impunity of Kwame Pianim, and same applies to Waterville. All right? We wouldn't have even been talking about Waterville or Isofoton today at all if Kwame Pianim or the NPP-led administration did the right thing in the first place. So to pretend that it is the NDC-led administration that is guilty, and it is the NDC administration that the Ghanaian people are angry with, that is just a spin that they have put on this whole matter.
Let me ask one final question, then I'll come time to wrap up. You have now 5 years. You've been in power for 5 years. You sacked Martin last year, early last year.
Well, you and I cannot conclude that he was sacked because, of course...
The statement came from the castle, saying that he had been dismissed.
He dismissed.
Yes. Okay, so let me use for disrespecting the... the president. Those were the official words that were used. But I'm saying, my question was, 5 years, he was sacked last year. And before he was sacked, this case was in court, really. He was sacked, he took the matter on. In less than a year, he secured judgment, 2 in a week. That had taken 5 years to settle. Indeed, we are still not there yet for the government. Do you accept that his victory alone is an indictment on the NDC government, as far as these 2 judgments at least are concerned?
Well, how can, successes chalked by a son, be an indictment on the family?
A prodigal son. Forced to be prodigal, not by his own desire.
Because I don't see this celebration that the NPP is having. Because Martin Amidu is not a member of your party and will not be a member of your party. He is a card-bearing member of the NDC and has proven that he will continue to be a member of the NDC party, but he will stand for that which will be in the best interest and the overall interest of the Ghanaian people. So in every society, you may have some bad nuts, okay? And you may have some people who can affect the group in a tremendous way. And today, he's been celebrated. It hasn't surprised me that the MPP wants to share in his glory. They've had news conferences, trying to take advantage of that. Success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan, they say.
But the point he's making is a valid one, isn't it? That in your press statement I read, you took credit that you also tried to do X, Y, Z, and you were also vilified, etc. And then the point again is, Martin Amidu, take it or leave it, is still a member of the NDC.
Well, I'm not interested in this NDC MPP business. When I criticize government because they are in charge. We pay them to defend us. And all I'm saying is that the government in power has things to do. We want to see the government do those things. I don't know why my good honorable friend mixes up with MPP, NDC, and somebody is still...
we are on majority caucus. We are on the caucus, isn't it?
It's okay.
It's a joint
caucus of both the NDC and MPP.
That the Martin Amidu is still NDC, he's not MPP. What does it matter?
Because you want to take undue credit.
Well, MPP, we are not interested in credit. Let me tell you what our interests are. If you listen to our press conference, our interests are these. One, government must go after the Wyoming money. That's our first concern.
It's a case in court.
Oh, but yes, that is the point that was put to you right now, that this case has been in court since 2010.
Yeah.
And it is...
The wheels of justice sometimes grind slowly.
If you can...
I wanted to wrap up on this so we can move on to our next topic.
What the NPP and what many Ghanaians expect of this administration is not an NPP NDC discussion.
Of course.
What they want is that will government go after the Wyoming money. Now that this judgment has come, we expect government to go after this money as well. We have MPP did raise issues with CP. Those issues are also coming up because aspects of it are all still in court. All we want to see from government is a certain commitment that it is willing to do for us what Martin Amidu is doing. And not that I'm using him as a standard, but to say that if you are a government and we pay you, we want you to work for us. That is all Ghanaians are saying. Let's not run it into this.
To be fair to government,
MPP,
in their
NDC.
press statement this week, they indicated, the same press statement that became a controversial subject between themselves and Martin Amidu, they indicated a number of things they're doing to make sure
we want to see the results.
That they're
want
indeed
to
tracking every single case now. They've been restructuring the AG's department to try and make sure every case in court, because if you notice, all the judgment debts, at least the key ones, were secured, how do you call it in law, when the AGs were not in court. The AG's department was not in court. You a lawyer, are you?
No,
you're not. Okay, but essentially the AG's department were not in court. We didn't even know about the case being
in court. They said we didn't have defense.
Exactly.
That's what they said.
But the point I'm making, they're now tracking all these cases so that they don't keep an eye on the ball, they don't lose the ball, and get the money for us.
I hear that, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
And I wish the government well. I wish the Attorney General's department well. I heard Mr. Honorable Dominic Ayeni make the point that there's a renewed commitment in the AG's department.
You applaud that, don't you?
Oh, yes, I do. And I wish them well. I hope they would be as committed at the beginning to sound. You see, the suggestion that there is a renewed commitment itself gives us information about how
I'm not sure
I agree. So
you disagree with that. You disagree.
No, all we're saying is we want to see the results. If I can land properly.
I haven't talked about that.
Honorable, let me land properly, please.
Some interpretations, which obviously will be negative. If renewed, somebody talks about renewed effort, renewed zeal, it doesn't mean that there was no effort being made previously, but then you are just doubling your zeal, to address
all
the
I'm saying
particular
that we
issue.
want to see the results.
That is why we talk about being strategic,
results.
Isn't it? When we say you are being strategic, it means that you are looking for all the possible avenues to addressing a particular problem. And if this is a problem that has become thorny, and there's need, as it were, to find finer ways of dealing with that problem. Basically, that's what Honorable Ayeni was talking about.
And all I am saying is that we wish the AG's department well in their new commitment. We want to see results.
And results we are seeing.
Okay. Where are the results?
Okay, so
where are the results?
Obviously, a pretty interesting conversation going on, but we need to move on to our next topic briefly before we close the show. We will listen to the Chinese Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister because he was talking this week about the treatment being meted out to some of the Chinese nationals engaged in illegal small-scale mining. If we have that clip, we'll play that. You can take a listen. When we come back, we'll interrogate what he's saying from the perspective and point of view of Mr. Kweku Kwarteng and Richard Kwasiga. Listen to the Deputy Chinese Foreign Affairs Minister.
We do not hope that this issue will affect the image of the Chinese in Africa.
We have asked the Ghanaian government to deal with the problem in especially carrying out the law enforcement operations in a mild, in a humane manner. We have asked the Ghanaian government to protect the Chinese nationals because there are reports of some robberies, some attacks against the Chinese nationals as well.
We have also heard reports of some protests in China about the operation being undertaken by the task force. We are yet to receive any credible complaint of any inhumane treatment. As far as government was concerned, nothing adverse was said at the press conference. They have seen footage of the damage done to our environment by Galamsey and are in agreement that the Ghanaian government has taken the right course of action. We do not have any difficulty with Chinese. We have numerous agreements ongoing with the Chinese government.
The Deputy Information Minister, Felix Osukwachi. Mr. Kwasiga, you heard that. Contrasting what we just heard from Felix and the Chinese Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister at the press conference. Clearly, they have concerns, but they have not properly addressed the concerns through the diplomatic channel that you expect they will use, and they're using press conferences. The international relations experts say that's pretty unusual, especially for a communist government like China.
Of course. I think that the Chinese always believe in mutual benefits in their dealings with other nations. And if they think that the cordial relationship that is actually growing between China and Ghana is being threatened, as it were, by this illegal mining activity, there will be the need for them to, use a more aggressive approach than the usual diplomatic channels to really convey, the feelings of the Chinese government. Because clearly it appeared that the Ghanaian populace were becoming a lot more uncomfortable, waking up daily to hear about Chinese involved in one issue or the other. If it's not about illegal mining, then it's about a Chinese shooting or killing a Ghanaian, and these obviously can be worrying. And the Chinese need the Ghanaian economy as well to thrive. It's true that it's quite a colossus of an economy, that we as a people can also benefit from them, but they also know that they can benefit from us a lot, and they would not want to really mar that relationship. There must be, it's not just about government, but the people, the people must also be on board before they can have a very, very good, business environment to really thrive here in Ghana. And so, for me, yes, it may look odd, out of place, but I think it was a good PR work.
I see.
Because they want to communicate to the Ghanaian people directly to let them know that they are unhappy with what is being done to the environment by their nationals.
Mr. Kwasi, you agree with that?
Well, I don't have any serious disagreements with him. I think it's entirely legitimate for the Chinese to make a case for their nationals and whatever. But let me be clear about this. I am from Obuasi, and you should go to Obuasi and see the damage activity of some illegal small-scale mining. Many of whom are Chinese people. It is a Chinese. You see, traditionally, there's this galamsey. Traditionally, we have been complaining. But what the Chinese have introduced, and maybe some other foreigners have introduced, is this heavy machinery, small-scale mining that does complete damage to the environment, to our water sources. They do it with impunity. They don't engage with the Environmental Protection Agency and all that. But more importantly, for us as a nation, Section 83 of the Minerals and Mining Act of 2006 says clearly that you are unable to do small-scale mining unless you are a Ghanaian. It is so clear. Why anybody would want to suggest that treat our people fairly, do this? I hear that only to the extent that you say, even if they violate the law, just deal with them through due process. Well, if that's what you're saying, then we accept that. I do not think that if the Chinese people break the law, that they must be linked or anything. But if you go shooting the nationals of people in your own country, you're never going to be treated with kids. Of course, Boase, there was disagreements over some concession, as I later came to understand, it's even AGA concession. And then, because the Chinese claimed they had been handled by some of the supporters of the opposing sides, you lay ambush and you shoot human beings. And then when they come after you, then you begin to complain that we are treating you unfairly. What I think the Chinese government should be telling its citizens that in Ghana, small-scale mining is a reserve for Ghanaians, and therefore get out. If they get out, there won't be any problem. But if they continue to...
Imagine a Ghanaian kills the Chinese in China.
Oh, you can imagine what will happen. So that's my advice to the Chinese government. If they do that, Ghana is willing to be friends with all countries, and therefore we will not be going after their nationals unduly. But if they break the law and they attack our people, I will not be surprised that they will go away with a bloody nose.
Mr. Kwasi, thank you very much. He's a man sitting on gold, literally, at Obuasi, MP for Obuasi West. And also you had Richard Kwasiga, MP for Keta. He says he's still the current, still serving, propaganda secretary of the NDC. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time here on Join Caucus. My name is Evans Mensah. Enjoy your weekend.